Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be here as per usual. As we talk about navigating mindfulness, I'm one of your co-hosts, the glorious Cheryl Sutherland. And with me, I have my other co-host, Lisa McHale. Yes. Who's like in the bush right now, reporting live. Of course, this is where we come to talk about how we are applying mindfulness, personal growth strategies to all areas of our life, especially as we are growing our own businesses and, just steeping into our new evolved version of us. Today we have one of my favorite people, and I don't say that lightly because I could count on my hands how many favorite people I have. Trista has been a friend of mine for the last couple of years, and we originally met actually at Make Lemonade, this glorious co-working space in downtown Toronto. And I mean, we instantly clicked. She was amazing, had great hair color. It's a thing that she did. There was like a bob happening. It was amazing. However, as we've got to know each other through the years and work on different projects, it's really come up not only how very cognizant she is about who she is, what she's creating, what she wants to create. I've also seen her grow through the evolution of her brand and move in a couple different ways. The reason I decided that I wanted to have her on was because we were having a conversation about transitions, and there's been multiple transitions that I've seen her go through within her business, within her companies. And then we shared a lot about transitions that she was going through in her life and how she's chose to see those as opportunities for growth versus getting stuck in them or suffering through them. So I guess a lovely quick intro on Trista. Trista Devries, I'm going to do the fake bio voice again. You ready? Trista Devries is a brand expert, marketing junkie, and web designer, and founder of Trista Devries Co, a Toronto-based branding and marketing agency. Trista is passionate about helping purpose-driven, heart-centered business owners grow their businesses their way. After 9 years in business, she knows exactly what it's like to hustle too hard for customers, hit a growth plateau, and feel the fear and do it anyway. Now she shows other business owners how to create brands that connect with their dream customers and grow with ease and thrive. When not consuming everything she finds about marketing or brand design, she can be found cross-stitching in a park with her three-legged wonder dog or binge watching a Netflix show with her husband. With that, I am so excited to announce and bring in Trista. Hey, Trista.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. That was a very, I'm all flushed now because that was a very glowing introduction. Thank you so much. Those are lovely things that you said about me.
Well, they're all lovely things that you wrote. So.
I meant the part before that.
Oh, the part before that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, like, it's just so fun, I think, in able to have like conversations with people that not only that you've seen them grow, but also like understand that not everybody has those same tools and those same abilities to grow through those things and allow those things to happen. So super proud of you. So I guess let's get into it. Let's get into the juice. Lisa, before we get started, do you have any, like, today's episode is about transition. So transitioning through businesses, transitioning through life. I know for myself, I've been through a plethora of transitions. Like, some people are like, your life is either a shit show or it's going to be a really great Lifetime movie. I don't know, whatever way that works out. So I know I've had my handful. Lisa, what about you? What are the transitions that you've grown through and gone through so far?
So it's been, the business itself is from 2003 and I was involved from the beginning. So, in ELAs, like a couple of highlights obviously stick out. Cutting checks for payroll before going to the hospital to give birth to my 11-year-old. That was a pretty big one. Like, people laugh all the time at that story, but it's like payday. People gotta get paid, right? And then I can go give birth. So that's one. Two is my separation from my ex. That was pretty tumultuous. So when I was listening to you talk about the bio, one of the questions I definitely want to ask Trista is like, what gives her, or what tools does she have in her belt that allows her to transition equally well through life changes, right? So when we talk about transition, what is it that she does or what keeps her focused to do that. So those are my two big highlight transitions is obviously the birth of my daughter and separating. Those have been probably the top two transition changes.
All
Thanks
right.
for asking. What about you, girlfriend?
Oh, me. Oh, God.
Give us the Lifetime movie.
A Lifetime movie. Well, I mean, like, it's out in the open now about in moving to California. Of course, you know, instead of working for like regular businesses, choosing to start my own business and like be like full on an entrepreneur, and relying on like my savings and working and just really doing a lot of figuring out, you know. And I think one of the biggest transitions, and I guess the most startling transition, well, I've got two actually. One, of course, was the death of my father, which was completely like out of the blue, and really choosing to figure out what my life was, like, you know, and how to deal with that. At that time, I did not have any personal growth tools, and I was a huge repressor because like that's just how I needed to do things, you know. Like I didn't know how to deal with these emotions, and my mom didn't know how to deal with those emotions. And I'm really grateful for this work because it's allowed me to take a look at that and like move through it. And then also, like, my dad is one of my most favorite people now because we have such a delicious relationship. And then, you know, moving to Toronto, like I did not move to Toronto by choice. It was kind of an accident where I came up and then I was doing a job interview and I went to fly back down and then got told that apparently one of the times that I came through the border, they did not recognize it or it didn't register on the system. And so I wasn't allowed to go back to my home for like, you know, I wasn't allowed to go back to America for 6 months. So it was like, oh, I guess I live in Canada now. And that's how I moved to Toronto. That was great because I did not have any real luggage. And, you know, it's been almost 3 years now that I've been here. And it's been such a great opportunity for me to just re-enroll myself, not only in saying yes to the life that I want, but understanding like that everything is always taken care of. So what is the opportunity that I have now? Like, do I want to continue on with Please Notes? Do I want to just get a regular job? Do I want to, you know, go back to Calgary and go back home? Like, what does that look like? And really allowing myself to step into that. So, Trista, how would you describe yourself? First question.
Yeah, this one's, I don't know. This is like truly, this is the hardest question you're ever going to ask anyone. Just describe yourself. Just use some adjectives and describe yourself. So I think probably the best thing for me to say is that like, I can tell you who I'm trying to be.
Who you are evolving into. Yes, I
Sure.
will take that.
Okay,
you know,
there we
that's
go.
approved. I just looked at the syllabus. You can do that.
Okay, thank you. Check. All right, so checks notes, acceptable. All right, good. So the person that I'm trying to be, and this is definitely a thing, like, that's constant, ongoing evolution. Like, nobody is one way all the time. That's just impossible. But like, I have made a very specific and conscious decision to be someone who is kind first and foremost, who doesn't live a transactional life. I don't do something for you so that you will eventually do something for me. So like, to give without expectation of return. I definitely like to have fun. So I think optimism is probably the best way to describe that. Like, I try very hard to see the upside, right? Like, there's lots of super shitty situations in the world, but there can always be an upside. And maybe you don't see it right now, and maybe it's okay to feel terrible today about thing X, but tomorrow thing X could be an amazing opportunity. So I try to reframe things. I'm big into gratitude. I like to say thank you a lot to myself, to other people. I like to specifically list things that I'm grateful for, and I like to appreciate the people in my life. So I think this one is one that's kind of evolving for me. I recently had a loss in my life, and like, every moment up until that person passed away, I would like miss a bus to spend time with them, or like would be like, I'm so grateful that today I have the opportunity to hang out with you. And I thought that that would make the transition easier. Like I spent all the time that I could, and I feel okay about the time that we had together. And that is in no way true. In fact, I think it made it worse. And so as a person who has tried for a long time to like protect their heart and um, not so that I don't experience that like intense pain, I also think that in the like that has had the unintended effect of making me enjoy my everyday and my relationships and being present with the people in my life and the people I love, and my friends, and even just like even my clients, even the people I work with. Like I fuse that together with gratitude. I'm grateful that I get to spend this time with you, but also there, the like this time is important to me, and I want to honor the time that we're having together. I think, and which I think is ultimately just going to make losing the people in my life so much more painful. So that's great, but that's all right. If it wasn't, if you didn't love somebody, it wouldn't be painful when they were gone. So
that's true. And it's interesting that you say that, because I feel like one of the love languages that popped up for me was that quality time is one of your love languages. And that's how you also support other people, is just like spending that time. And like, let's continue talking about some of the transitions that have gone through. I know that you have switched careers, and then also within your business have chosen to kind of shift the things that you're really focused on. I know for myself, and I can say for Lisa as well, that that's something that we all have to do. Like, just it's this continual trial. I wouldn't even say error. It's like the evolution of yourself, the evolution of your business. It's like, oh, I'm interested in this, or oh, this is what people need from me. So tell me a lot more about like your career transitions, and how that has felt, like how you decided that it was time for you to move from one thing to the other. And then we can look at some more of your other transitions.
right. So I would say that like my ability to know when it's time to transition has certainly changed a lot. And a lot of that has to do with that's just a natural thing. I got older, so it changed. That's fine. But it also changed, I think, because of the environment I was in. So the reasons that I chose to leave, say, traditional employment, were almost, looking back now, and I don't think I could have defined this in the moment, but they were almost entirely stress based, right? Like I've just reached my limit of stress, and I think there's kind of a degree of control there too, right? So like I feel like I have no control in this situation. Nothing, like I can't control what I make. I can't control if I keep this job. I can't control, when the work comes in. I can't control, like nothing about my life is in my control. And I have to get up every day and come here in order to earn money so that I can continue to live. And so I think that, like the ability to quit, the ability to leave a situation allows you to feel like you have a level of control. So I think I probably did some of that to a degree, which is funny because I really only, like from the time I left university to the time that I decided to leave and become an entrepreneur, I only left 2 jobs. but within one of those jobs, there were a number of internal transitions. So like I just continued to kind of to look for opportunities to be fair, I think honestly just make more money, because that was how things were framed for me when I was young, was that like, get job, do everything you can to keep job and protect job, earn money, have babies, plausibly get married, become a teacher. So I'm from London, Ontario, and that's like, and I'm I'm not being funny when I say that everyone I know who's still living there is married with 2 children and is a teacher. Anyway, so I think I definitely like left for control reasons. As I started to truly like stress detox, my ability to make decisions about when to leave things became much more intuitive. And I sort of, I ended up spending more time kind of like reflecting and looking ahead. So the way I kind of decide when it's time to transition, as long as those things are mostly within my control, and when it's not, like, you know, I did look after my mother for the last 2 years of her life, and to a degree, I could have said, no, you have to go to long-term care. But that wasn't the right choice for me. When somebody is passing away, or like when you think somebody doesn't have a lot of time left, the only thing, my best advice is like, do things that you can live with when they're gone. I mean, it's about them, but like, and about how you care for them. But like, if you won't be able to live with yourself, if you send your mom to long-term care, then definitely take her home. And that's really kind of where that comes from for me. But to get back to the point, it's become more intuitive, just that I listen more. I try to look ahead and think like, in 5 years, is this the person, like, who would I be in 5 years if I stayed here, or if this thing continued? And then I try to look at kind of those, like, okay, so I would be a horrible, terrible, angry stress ball who didn't like their life. Okay, so then, like, could we change this thing? Like, could I talk to my boss or my manager, or could I shift my business to be this, or could I shift it to be this, or could I shift it to be this? And if none of those things are acceptable answers, then I will make a transition. And sometimes the transition is transitioning to something more positive within the same situation too. So that's kind of how I try to look at it, I think.
That's awesome. Lisa, do you have any input?
I do. I really love how you unknowingly, or maybe intentionally even, so I would want to know about that, that self-care is really important in order to show up and care for others, and that self-care that empowers you to care for others also heightens your intuition. So it answers my original question of, you know, what tools did you have to do, and in navigating mindfulness, a big part for me to sort of share is that meditation, that inwardness, that awareness of oneself is so important to be of service to other people, right? Because our businesses are to be in service to others. And that's not necessarily possible if you don't take good care of yourself. And so thank you for sharing that point about taking care of yourself and knowing what you can live with and what you can't live with, and filling up your own tank to be able to share. So that's a great intro about yourself and what you're doing. Awesome. Cheryl?
Yeah, so I think the things that really came up for me as you were sharing is I feel like your journey and like the things that people dictate as being their, I guess, key indicator of what they value to move through, like what they need, is it really sounded like a lot of the things that you were working on were a lot of the paradigms that you had been taught, like really valuing the money and like, oh, this is the incentive, like this is what success looks like. And then as you grew older, understanding that like your own peace of mind and like all these different conditions are what really are valuable to you, really are valuable to you, and that you decided that you want in your work. It's kind of like when you're young and you're dating, and then like, you know, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Well, you didn't know, right? You had to go through that process of dating that man who potentially may or may not have been a little bit on the shady side, and like had a really bad like relationship, like you let him take you to Taco Bell for lunch and you are like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. No, now you're like, I need lobster, baby. I need lobster. You know what I mean? Your standards just change. And I think that allowing that to be a good thing and allowing yourself not to be feel guilty for it is super, super important. So thank you for sharing that. I feel like, again, for me, it's the same thing where, you know, like you grow through that, and then coming from the space of intuition of like, is this where I want to be in 5 years? Is this pulling me towards the life that I want to create or not? And like that, like, letting that be the thing that leads you towards in your decision making. Does this feel right? Does it feel good? Does it feel natural? Right? So that's delicious. So going back onto more transition. So you had touched on somebody that was super important to you passing away and transitioning. Did you want to talk about how, or I guess my question is like, how did you process that transition in and it could be in a very similar way that you did with your career transitions. However, like, and also dealing with like the fact that at this point in time, like you have a full-time business, there's a lot of people that, and I was actually reading today, especially with dealing with grief, there's all these different traditions, and you can tell your employer, yeah, I need a week off, or yeah, I need 10 days off. Like I need to handle this for me. However, when you have your own business, like there's all this extra stuff that, you know, like we're very hard on ourselves. There's all this extra stuff that does come in and say like, you know, judgments about ourselves, and you really setting different expectations. So for yourself, dealing with losses and transitioning through that, and then also still running a successful business while being kind to yourself. I know this sounds like a hero sandwich. There's a lot of pieces and parts. Like, how do you feel like you did that, or you are currently doing that? And then if you are still currently doing that, what are your thoughts as you're going through it when, like, again, something comes up that does not feel right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the way that I'm dealing with it right now has a lot to do with the way I dealt with it when my mom passed. Which is to say that, like, when my mom passed, like, I mean, it's such a weird thing to say that for somebody who was essentially terminally ill, or like had an illness that they were going to die of complications, complications of multiple sclerosis, or of any autoimmune disease or long-term illness. Like, you know, I mean, you know, cancer is usually the thing that kills you when you have cancer, but like, you know, with MS or Lou Gehrig's or whatnot, it's not usually the disease, it's usually complications of, similar to Parkinson's sort of. So anyway, the like, it was still an unexpected passing. Like, we went on August 31 of 2016, we went to the X, and she just started coughing up this green stuff near the end of the day, and I was like, well, this is weird. Like, she basically, like, over the course of a day went from like being normal to having like a full-blown infection, and we thought we were treating it okay, and she was always loopy because of the antibiotics. And then finally she kind of started coughing up blood, and we were like, oh, this is really, really bad. So we took her to the hospital, and of course it was really, really bad. And then she died 10 days later. So it was unexpected. Even though that's such a weird thing to say for somebody that you're kind of like expecting to die, you know what I mean? Like, so like we're in a process of like the end of life. Now, end of life for someone with MS could be a year. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 months, or it could be 10 years. So because the disease process is different for everybody, and again, those complications, depending on how they're managed, you know, can come or go, or whatnot. So it was really unexpected, but I wasn't really working at the time. I had like my purpose essentially was to be her caregiver. So I didn't have that many clients. I had sort of like calmed down my marketing activities, so I was mostly operating on referrals. So I think I had like 1 or 2 projects, maybe active at the time, where I sort of said like, listen, like my mom's, and also we had like a 10-day window. I was like, hey, listen, my mom's in the ICU. I need a little bit of time to manage the situation. I don't really know what's going on. So like by the time she passed, you know, like the grief process had kind of started when we started talking, like 2 or 3 days in, when we started talking to the doctors, and they were like, we don't think her lungs are going to recover. And if they do, this is not a good life. Like, this is like, she's going to probably be on a ventilator for the rest of her life. Like, this is not the quality of life that she wants. So with the recent passing that I had, it was very sudden. Like, you know, the health just fell off a cliff, and they were gone in 24 hours. So that was a very different thing. And now I have like 7 active clients. So the difference is, though, that I had been through the process once. Like, this is a terrible thing to say, but like my experience with grief was very beneficial to me. But it was like, I did know kind of what was going to happen. I did know how I was going to, like, I had some sense of how I was going to feel. And I kind of had a sense of like sort of what the process was going to be. That being said, the day that he passed, I just took the day off. I didn't tell anybody. I was trying to be a good business owner. But so after he passed about 4:30. I like went and took a nap. Like I like, we came home, and I took a nap, and had a little bit of food, And my husband and I kind of like sat around and cried a little bit and like chatted about, you know, his life and whatnot. And then we and then I did 8 hours of work. Like I started at 10 p.m. and I finished at 4 a.m. Because I knew that that would allow me to not work on Thursday, like on the Thursday and Friday. So that gave me the opportunity to kind of have 4 days. So like I worked until 4 a.m. I put an out of office on that specifically said because of a death in the family. I knew nothing urgent was going to come up. I do have a phone system that's just for my business. So I put my out of office on, like an out of office message on that too. And I was just like, you know what, this just has to be fine. Like I am allowed to take this time for myself. There's no such thing as a marketing emergency. Like no one, like everyone will survive, even if your website goes down. Like everything will be okay. Babies aren't going to die. If I worked in in a place where babies would die, I would have more contingencies. So I think that really helped me with that. But like also I was destroyed. So like I also had to honor the fact that like I couldn't work. Like I was so irritable, I was so crushed, and then getting back to work the following week. So being back on the Monday, like 4 days was in no way enough time, but that was as much as I could give myself being an entrepreneur. So when I got back, like, you know, it was just a process of being like honest with everybody and just being like, hey, so like somebody died. I'm trying to get through. The brain fog around grief and the inability to sleep regularly is just so severe. So I was like, so if I tell you something and then tomorrow I tell you something different, and that's unusual for me, this is why. And all my clients were really great about it, because I don't work with people who would be shitty about that. Like I don't work with humans who would be crappy about this. So yeah, I think that's, you know, that's how I'm dealing with it right now. The other thing that I do too is I just really try to honor the feelings. I have over like 15 years become a person who's like not afraid to have a feeling. I very much was when I married my husband, definitely afraid to have feelings. That like the only feelings that were acceptable when I was young were like anger and then possibly like laughter. I can't really say joy because that's not what was acceptable. But like definitely anger, super okay. Laughter was fine. Being like on an even keel, the most acceptable. Or anger. And so when I started having feelings like and I realized like, I'm having a feeling. What do I do about that? And I decided like the feeling felt okay and I wanted to keep having that feeling. So I've learned to kind of honor my feelings and carve out space for them. And for me, that's kind of what I'm doing now. So like, if something in the house reminds me of him, I have, these are actually, there is a technical term for them. They're called grief bursts. But like, and I feel like I'm going to cry about it. That's okay. Like that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that feeling. There's nothing objectively wrong about me crying or getting sad, and that sadness doesn't somehow make me weird or broken. Like I'm sad because I lost someone who was really important to me for 18 years. So, like that's a perfectly acceptable thing. So, and I'm not really judgy about feelings that way. So I think that's also really helping as well.
I love that. And I love the way that you actually pop that in, like those grief bursts, like really understanding that even though like you're still moving and grooving and still taking, things on as easily or as much as you can, that there are going to be incidences that pop up. I mean, even for myself, like I can now actually watch funerals on TV. If there's one like in a show, I can also now I MC a lot of my friends' weddings, so I can actually now stand in the room with the mother-daughter or like the father-daughter dance. I could do that. I can also like intro and like stand there for the speeches. And you know what? One of the things that I'm really, and I know we had talked about this briefly beforehand, really excited about is like really getting at the other side of that. So instead of just seeing the sadness of it, being able to see how delicious that moment is and how precious that moment is. And I know for myself, like I've already planned contingency plans, like all of my uncles or like my brother is going to like, do all these things for me. And then just allowing us to have that particular moment of shared conversation or of that share. So That's really good for me. Lisa.
Hi. Really, again, Trista, your shares are so on point with this navigating mindfulness intention that Cheryl and I have. For me, the whole experience of awareness and then labeling. So when you describe, you know, the different feelings, I would love to maybe put in the chart of the emotional wheel chart. So you have like your basic feelings, and then you can dig a little deeper, and you can dig even deeper than that. And all of those, again, leading to awareness and the labeling of, so that you can experience that emotion fully, so that it's not holding back. And from it, this release of goodness happens. And so,
100%.
I do send you thoughts of comfort, because I don't know how recent this loss is for you, and encouragement to continue doing what you're doing, because I think it's definitely on point. And, you know, congratulations on having 7 clients and being able to navigate your way through that and still keep your business afloat. So kudos.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think is, and a lot of people that are entrepreneurs will understand this. Like at first, when you start off, you'll just take everyone, and then eventually you get a little bit more selective within your clients. You know, I have a no asshole rule that I've implemented. Right? That's like, and I actually learned it from you, Lisa. I was like, I kept saying I had a no asshole rule, but I'd be all like, but wait.
Mine's not no asshole. Mine's a little lighter. It's PG. Mine's a no jerk rule.
Yeah.
Right? And
You know,
that's part of my onboarding conversation. Like before we even start onboarding, as you know, it's like, okay, so we have a rule. And if you're not okay with us supporting you with this overarching rule, because in one of our businesses we do phone answering, and if someone is just going to be a jerk to someone on our team, then they have a pass to say, you know, you can call us back when you're ready to be supported. I'm not here for you to unload on. And that really also, like you said, Trista, is like, you don't have anyone that you work with that wouldn't understand what a loss in the family means and requires in order to continue to be your best self, to support them and service them. So yes, yay to the no asshole and yay to the no jerk rules.
No jerk. And then also, like, I love how you're able to display, because I think especially as being a woman in business, there was this whole conversation around like how we used to have to be quote unquote really masculine in order to be professional. Like we weren't able to share like, hey, yeah, I'm having difficulty breastfeeding, or hey, I've had a really long night. Like, and then being able to not only have those conversations with our clients, but also be leaders and show our clients that it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to allow things come up, and you don't have to be the person to handle everything right now in this second. So again, thank you for that. Moving forward, I have, this is one thing that I think is delicious. I mean, everything is, let's be honest. So I have a particular mantra that I usually say when things get really, really difficult for me. And Lisa knows my experience, especially when I moved back to Canada, when I came back, she was one of the first people that were like, oh my gosh, you're here. Let me grab you. Like, let's hang out. Let's do something. And it was just like, and I think at that time I was still in this space of shock of like, oh, I just lost my whole life. I don't have, like, I have to clean out my office. Like I had to tell my roommate, like, don't pick me up. I'm not coming back. Like, I have to buy clothes because I have no clothes, like all these different things. And she was just like, yeah, here, just scoop me up like a little babe, and was like, I'm going to take care of you. However, the mantra that I kept telling myself, or the verbiage I kept telling myself, is like, everything is always working out for me. Like, I know that the universe has a plan. I know that things are always falling into place. And I might not be able to see it right now, and that's okay. I trust that this is working out. So for you, was there one piece of advice or like a mantra that you like to hold on to that has helped you move through a lot of these difficult transitions, whether it's like switching companies, you know, leaving one place, starting a new place, or even again with the transitions with some of the people that you've lost in your life?
Yeah, this is so interesting. So I kind of fall on like a weird spiritual spectrum, which is that like one of my issues, like one of the things that really prevents me from connecting with traditional religion is that like someone has a plan for me, which is funny because like in my most like woo woo connected moments, I do feel like there's like we're all here for a purpose and like we're on a specific journey. And if you are one of the people who believes in the idea that you chose the life you're currently living, then like what does that mean for you? Like if I chose this, and there have been a lot of, you know, things in my life that have been horrible, there's also been lots of things in my life that have been wonderful, then like, you know, did like if I chose this life for myself, like the spiritualness and like my soul and the magic fairy dust that makes up humanity, or makes up our spirit, you know, if I chose this, then like what am I here to learn? So these are the things that I you know, when I'm like pouring milk into my or cream into my coffee in the morning, like these are the things that I'm like, I wonder what would it mean if I chose this? Anyway, so I, like truly I think that like my mantra is the same, but the things that I have kind of, one thing that I've always kind of consistently said to myself over time, or like that I've always really believed, is that like life will support me. And over time that has evolved into the universe has my back, which I know is a thing Gabby Bernstein says, but I like it's
one of my favorite books.
Yeah, but it like also though, like it really, that phrase really connected with me in a very like in a very specific way. I was like, that, you know, when you hear something and you're like, now that makes sense. That's a thing that is true to me. And I also like to tell myself that there's magic in my life. And so when it comes to life will support me, that's the thing that I've said to myself since I was a teenager and I had to leave home. So like when I was 16, I had to move out and get a full-time job and still finish high school. So I've essentially been on my own since then. And like things just kind of always worked out for me, you know, the same way that like, you know, like life is always like things are always working out for me and whatnot. Like even the apartment that I am currently sitting in right now, I had 1 month to find a new apartment, move my husband and I before my mom ran out of care, because she came home from the hospital. She had fallen in the community, and 8 months later of rehab, quote unquote rehab later, she was being released back to home. Her care providers in London were actually like, this was very generous of them. They gave her 24-hour full-time care at home for 30 days. So I had from April 1 until April 30th to get an apartment, like to find an apartment, move myself and my husband, and then go get my mom. And so, or sorry, no, it was technically 2 months, but I had 1 month for us to move because she was coming home. She was released on April 30th, and I had 1 month. We moved her on May 31st of 2014. And so I had 15 days. I moved, I had 15 days, and then we went and packed her house and drove her here. And like the way I found this apartment was so weird and serendipitous, and like if I tried to recreate that series of events and like what led to me getting this perfect apartment, I mean, it's a Toronto community housing building. They have like right in their like code of what they do, and in their bylaws they have a commitment to accessibility. So putting in a ceiling lift for my mom was no problem. In fact, they were fine with that. When the super showed us the apartment the first time, my mother-in-law was like also like kind of serendipitously in town and came with me to see the apartment the first time. And so like we were standing, and she was like, well, you know, it might be tough for your mom's wheelchair to get over the hump, over the doorstop into the apartment. And the super was like, oh yeah, you can just put a ramp out there if you want. And I was like, what? And like all the doors had were all accessible. They all, like, you press a button and they open. So, or you wave your fob and it opens. So like, we couldn't have lived in a more perfect place. And then it turned out long term, this was the best possible place for us to live. It's also very reasonably priced, and the community here is wonderful. So like, but like, I couldn't have engineered those things. I couldn't have made those things happen if I tried. And so, and it's always just kind of been like that for me. Like things have just fallen into place when I really need them. And I don't mean that like I have to be desperate in order for things to happen in my life. That's not what I mean at all. I just mean like when I really need them. Like when I left to run this empire, I quit my job working at Factor, which is the Foundation Assisting Canadian Talent on Recordings. It's an arm's length organization from the government. They administer funds from the Department of Canadian Heritage, and they support music, like Canadian musicians in a variety of different ways. Look them up. They're an amazing organization. everybody but Rush, who's Canadian, that you've ever heard of, with the exception of Arcade Fire. So Arcade Fire and Rush, those are the two. Oh, and Justin Bieber. They've all got Factor money. And so they're wonderful. I was the executive assistant to the president during a pretty significant transition time for them. And like the day I left Factor, I like called my husband, who is a carpenter, and that's important to the story, but I called him and said, this is it. Today's the day. Today's the day I quit. Like, I can't do it anymore. And he was like, okay, no problem. I'll talk to you about it later though, because I've got wet glue. And I was like, amazing, bye. And like and then I wrote a resignation letter, and that's how I quit my job. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a job to go to. I was like, whatever, I can build websites. I'm going to build websites. That's what I'm going to do. I also left to run an online film magazine, which is kind of neither here nor there, but like I was just like, that's it, I'm done. And life did support me. Like, I was able to earn an income that got me to here, and yeah, so life will support me. Another one, there isn't a long story behind this, but it is a thing that's kind of always stuck with me. Person in my life who shall not be named, he always used to say to me, you write your own biography, which I think is funny coming from that specific person, because like the biography he wrote is pretty shit. But I do think about that, right? Like, is this, if someone were to write this in the book of my life, is this a thing I want written? What would they editorialize about this? Like, how would this kind of look, not so much like look to other people, but like, is this a thing I want someone to say about me when I'm gone? Mm-hmm. So that's one that I kind of like check myself with, but like, life will support me is my mantra.
I love that. I have one of the mantras that I love. Of course, I've already said, like, everything is always working out for me. Everything is falling into place. And it's so funny that you mentioned Gabby's Bernstein's book, because Lisa, like, as I was talking about that trip, that when I first got here and Lisa snatched me up, we actually ended up at Yorkville Mall to go and get like an American Girl doll for her daughter, or get like her American Girl doll, like her hair washed or something. And as we were going to that Indigo, I saw that book, and I was all like, I feel like I need to buy this book. I don't know why. I've never seen it before. I've never seen the cover of it before, but I'm like, I feel I need to buy it. And then I hummed and hawed for a bit, and I was like, no, like when I get a hit from my intuition, I bought it. And honestly, that book was one of the things that really took me through that period of transition. And I think, like, even with like a lot of the judgments I had for myself for creating that situation, like, how did I create this? How did I put this together? Like, what was the purpose of it? And at that time, I wasn't sure. I couldn't see it. And now I understand it, now that I'm on this end. But just to continually to always like, just look for the positive, come back and like, reground yourself. Like, what is it that you want? What do you want to create? And just like allowing that goodness to happen to you. One of my favorite mantras has always been, since like one of my friends introduced this to me years ago, right when we just started Please Notes. And it was, life loves me. And just looking in the mirror and continually saying, like, life loves me, because we do live in a friendly universe. Things are always working out for us. And I think the more that we decide that that is our base level, that is our belief system, then the easier it is for the universe to support us, to give us the things that we desire, to like surprise and delight us in the most delicious ways. However, if we don't expect good things to happen to us, then they won't happen to us, right?
Oh, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely.
So I am gonna plug your Please Notes sticky notes, because
plug my sticky notes.
I am, because it's my favorite giveaway to people when and thanks for sharing the story about when you landed in Canada. So yeah, those are my favorites. I do give them away because it stays with people, right? And you can't always be with people, so I love seeing my daughter write on them, and then she'll stick them. And I know she's seeing it, whether she's conscious of it or not. She's seeing life loves me. She's seeing I'm, worthy. All these things. But life loves me is quite frankly my favorite, because it's the overarching theme, right, of what we're trying to accomplish. So, yes, I do buy them, and I do give them away. Because they're great. And Trista, to your point, yes, I think life is going to be what you make it. I mean, there are reggae songs for that. There are there's always tips to what it is that your next best step is going to be, and you do have that conscious choice of making the switch to either feeling bad or being victimized. And there's nothing wrong with experiencing those. However, when you're ready to shift and create the life that you want, it's great to hear life loves me, because then it almost adds into the courage bucket. So thank you for your lovely shares. And yeah, what a great conversation today.
Yeah, I love this. It's so delicious. And I mean, I think what was something that popped in when you were sharing was, I think I lost it. If it comes back, then it comes back. But, really taking the time to decide like what we want our futures to look like. What do we want to leave behind? What is our legacy? And it doesn't have to be big. Some people, the thing that they love doing is supporting people. I had a cleaner back when we lived in West Hollywood. Betty was amazing. She was this gorgeous Mexican woman. She had the brightest smile, and she would just come in and be like, I take care of you. Everything is handled. You come back home and the house just feels like a fairy went through it. And it's because she loved doing what she was doing. She would take care of the animal, like all these different things. But it's like, this is the legacy that you leave behind. It's this legacy of love. And that looks different for every single person. And it doesn't really matter like what it is that you do. It's just like, if that thing lights you up, if that thing like makes you really happy, like that's what we get to step into and practice stepping into more and more every single day. Okay, so with that, of course, we're gonna have to say goodbye to our lovely Trista soon. I'm honestly, I had one idea of what this conversation would bring, and it's been so much more than that. So I want to thank both of you for bringing all the magic, bringing all the juice. Lisa for giving us this delicious background to look at in the woods. Last thing is, what is something like? How can people find you? First of all, what would be the preferred way for them to interact with you? Whether it's for branding, marketing, getting this website design. She's amazing when it comes to branding. I actually have to go through a rebrand soon because it's our 5-year anniversary. And the Please Notes logo needs an update. Girl, don't get too excited. Calm down. I'm palpitated. I'm figuring it out. But if people want to reach out to you either to learn more about you, to get some marketing tips, some more branding, et cetera, or and I know that there's some additional things that you're offering as well. What is the best way to get a hold of you? And what is something that you want people to get involved with that you are working on?
Yeah. So, kind of 3 ways to get in, 2 ways to get in touch with me, and one that's just exciting and I'm really jazzed about. So if you want to work with me personally, you can find me at tristadevries.com, and that's where I do sort of my VIP stuff. So that's where I do brand design, that's where I do web design, and sort of associated marketing. I don't do too much marketing just like in and of itself anymore. I like to work with people long term. So if we've built your brand together or we've done something along those lines, I'm happy to support you with marketing. But like coming just in tactically, it's not my favorite thing, but I'm always willing to have a conversation. If you are an entrepreneur who is just looking for support, so if you want brand support, but you don't have $5,000 to $10,000 to hire a brand expert, you can find me at bigthrivingbrands.com, which is where I offer info products and additional learnings and blog posts and all kinds of things. And there's a quiz there that you can take that'll tell you what stage of business you're at. Like it defines what stage of business you're at and then gives you some supports and things you can do next. So that's all free. There's courses and things there that you purchase, but like that I just talked about there, your little branding roadmap, your actions roadmap, that's free. And finally, we're coming into the end of phase 1 and into phase 2 of something that I'm really passionate about. I run a group called Ladies Unlearning Racism. And so I've worked with 3 amazing Black women to create a series of workshops on unpacking and unlearning anti-Black systemic racism. So far we've covered topics like the historical context of systemic racism for anti-Black racism and inequity, white privilege and fragility, microaggressions, unconscious bias, etc. And so we're heading into phase 2, and you can find all of that on ladiesunlearning.com. The workshops are $47 a piece. They are, so that's very reasonable. You can also buy a pack of them. And so in January, we will be launching or releasing like phase 2 of that. So there will be a whole bunch of new topics that are just as wonderful. And I can't stress enough how much we all need to get steeped in this kind of education and start, questioning the powers that be, right? So like you can't ask questions of your representatives and your MPs or your provincial people or your local counselor unless you have the tools to ask those questions. So, you can't question somebody on why specifically they didn't vote to defund the police in Toronto if you don't really know what you're talking about. And that kind of like very specific questioning and holding them to account is really what will help to make change across the world. So that's where you can find me. So ladiesunlearning.com, Big Thriving Brands, and Trista.com and TristaDevries.com.
So yeah, we're just going to hunt her down. All the links are going to be in the show notes. So check that out. And then one quick little mention on that anti-Black racism thing. So I've known Trista for a hot minute. And especially since a lot of this anti-Black racism has been coming up, a lot of unlearning that's been coming up, I'm seeing more and more people that are using this opportunity as something to cash in on. And I've also seen a lot of my friends who are just know that this is a problem, that they need to be the ones to like lead their own learning. However, the people that are facilitating some of these things are not accomplished. They're not qualified. They have again, it would be the blind leading the blind in regards to, and I'm going to just say it, like non-people of color leading some of these sessions, but they don't have any of the contacts. It's like I'm attempting to tell you what chocolates taste like, and I've never tasted chocolate, right? So one of the things that I appreciate about this is that you're doing it from the space of allyship and then stepping up in leadership in that context and supporting these amazing other women of color in sharing that and having that conversation, so that you are not only showing up as like, yeah, I'm on board, but I'm also in it and I'm going through this process too. So I love that. Mwah, chef kiss. So with that, that's been today's episode of Navigating Mindfulness. We were talking about transitions through loss, transitions through jobs, and then again, lastly, transitions through unlearning some of this like racism and biases that, we all innately have. The more we practice moving through these, understanding like, oh, this is a problem. Okay, well, this is the next solution, and moving through it makes it easier. Lisa, do you have any last words?
No, other than thank you to our guest here, Trista. Good luck with everything that you're doing. Really love. I will be reaching out to you and checking out your links. That's it for me.
That's it. All right. Well, have an amazing day, everybody that's listening to the gorgeous ladies that are on this amazing podcast with me. It's always my pleasure to have these conversations, and I'm doing it completely for my own, like selfishly. Like I love talking to people and I love learning about people. And if these conversations support other people in doing the same, in growing, in becoming more of themselves, having a little bit of that inspiration, feeling a little bit motivated, then why not? Right? So thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you next week. Yay!